welcome to the CyberHealthPodcast. This is Stephen Perano, your host, and I decided to create this podcast to give an opportunity to people that work in the medical field, people that work in the technology space, to share their story, share their journey, but more importantly, we're trying to inspire people. Through this episode, if there's any questions you might have, please leave a comment below for myself or the guest, and we will try to answer as soon as we can. And if you like what you see, please like and share it, and that will help us out a lot. And today I'm very excited to introduce my next guest. She is a cybersecurity leader with a wealth of experience in risk management, incident response, and advising C-suite executives. She is the founder of SecurityLex. Expertise lies in post-breach security remediation, digital transformation, and fostering change through technology and culture. So today I have the pleasure of introducing Alexareubens. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's just get to the beginning, your experience in politics.
Sure.
Okay.
So early days, figuring out what I want to do. And it kind of does segue eventually into security. I knew I wanted to do something where I was helping people. I knew I wanted to do something where I could be a badass in some variety and wasn't sure what that was going to be. So through high school, I interned for senators and congresswomen and just got inspired by seeing how they serve their constituents. And it was menial work. I mean, it was phone calls, paperwork.
Right.
I did start to digitize the decades of photos that they had into like e-files, like little things that just kind of got me involved in knowing what it would mean to kind of do public service. And I really enjoyed it. And I think that kind of led to being interested in security, being interested at the time in more of the like civil protection of things. And as we'll get into, kind of one thing led to another out of politics into the private sector and in doing information security.
Sure. Yeah, because I saw that, and correct me if I'm mistaken, that you went to University of Miami, right, for your undergrad?
I did. I started off at George Washington in D.C., and I was studying criminal justice. So this is kind of how the journey evolved. So it was from the political exposure to going to D.C. and saying, I want to be a three-letter agent. Like, this is kind of where I was looking to go. And so studying criminal justice from D.C., I then moved to Miami and finished my undergraduate degree, still in criminology at the time, and graduated with a degree in criminology from the University of Miami.
Nice. And then from there, you continue your journey in education. What was your next step from there?
Right. So that's when things started to shift from the civil world or the, let's say, the like personnel side of security. And out of college, and while I was in undergrad, I got an internship in a tech company where I was doing personnel security. It was looking at, civil unrest and travel and business continuity and these kinds of things that would support the enterprise in personal security. And circumstantially, there was this kind of growing interest and need in having more attention to the cyber side of security in the group that I was interning in. So just specifically to the continued education part, I started to pursue a master's in science in cybersecurity while working. Once I got full-time employment, the company fortunately was able to support me in getting that advanced degree.
Oh, nice.
And through that I was learning that, the cyber side of security was really where it was at for me and where I was getting really excited. And the more exposure I was getting to information security through this internship and through the role there, the more I wanted to just dive deeper into the academics of that. And so, I eventually got a master's in cybersecurity, kind of in a backwards direction because I had already been kind of working in it for a while at that point. It took me a while.
Right. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, so what led you to want to continue and further your education? You were already in the field of cybersecurity. You wanted to specialize, or?
I was already in the field, but that was luck and grit and really just being the kind of person who wanted to do it all and wanted to establish myself in some sort of way.
Sure.
But when I started working in cybersecurity, I was given an opportunity kind of moving from a program manager into like governance, risk, and compliance and getting exposure to that. And then incident response kind of found me, and I was loving that, but I had no academic background in that, you know? And so while I learn a ton on the job, you need the credential. Like you need to really understand kind of one, like the history of technology too, and like what is the network and how did this all come together? Like why am I responding to an incident in this way? And so I really wanted to understand what it was I was doing. I also wanted to earn respect. And I, again, felt really lucky to be given opportunities to already be in the industry, like you said. But I knew I wasn't going to be able to continue in this trajectory of growth if I didn't have the knowledge and the skill set and the degree behind it. So I knew I had to do it despite, you know, the nights and weekends I was, you know, giving to grad school while working.
Sure. And you kind of mentioned there as a woman in that space of technology, and did you have any particular obstacles that you had faced going through that transition?
Sure. I mean, I think like any woman or anyone of a diverse background, the tech industry is male dominated. We know this. I'm not the first person to kind of be confronting it. And I think on top of all of that, not only was I a woman in this space coming in, I was also really young, and I still am, but take it, you know, kind of my first management role, I was 24. And I was, again, like really grateful that the executive management saw in me the qualities, the capability, the potential, and trusted me with some crazy amount of responsibility. And I certainly rose to the occasion, but it took proving myself as a woman and as a young woman to be able to put kind of like the background to what I was doing. And ultimately, I think what I learned most from these experiences in confronting bias or just confronting my differences is that I get it too. Like I'm building a team, take myself back to that first management role. It wasn't that I was just taking on a few young interns under me. I was building a team from the ground up, post-incident, to implement our post-breach transformation strategy. So I was tasked with finding, hiring, and establishing an organization of 12 people at the time. Wow. So now imagine walking into an interview with someone who could be your manager is someone who could be your daughter. Like, I get it, you know? Right. And I think then later taking over an organization as a director with a team who was already established was another whole challenge to being a young woman, was that this team already knew what they were doing. They had already been working together. They had a director that had then left. And so it was all about building the trust and earning my stripes again. I think the most validating part of confronting bias and differences is the moment later in building a relationship with this team when they told me, and a few of them specifically really stand out, who said, you know, I wasn't sure about you. I was apprehensive. I didn't know if I could trust you. You're young. I've never had a female manager. I've never worked with you before. And I didn't understand why I would report to you, right? But they were telling me this to say, but I get it now. And that is like the best feeling. These are some of my, closest, people in my network now today were the ones that were able to kind of humble themselves to say, you taught me about bias. You taught me about diversity in ways that I didn't know were going to come my way. And you proved yourself, which, I think we all have to do. So I'm okay with that. Right. And again, like I get it. It fuels me in a way where I'm like, you need someone like me on your team. You need a woman on your team because I'm able to provide something that they can't. And if that's a bias, that's okay too. Like, I know I have an asset that others don't on the team, and I'll round you out in that way. And I'm like, just not looking to diminish any of that, like, womanness or youth or whatever it might be, because it's an asset at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, because so you would say you were the youngest person on the team in the most part?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So there, I could see how that could bring some challenges. You have someone that's in the field 20 plus years, and here you are, right, coming in your 20s, right, your early 20s, and you're like, I'm your manager now. This is how things are going to go.
Right. Like, do what I say, but dude, I get it.
Right.
I wouldn't want me either, but you will want me because I'll show you, and let's talk about it when that's hard for you. And honestly, that doesn't last very long because I think ultimately, like, the proof is in the pudding. And
Sure.
And man, I work, so.
Well, being in management, I'm sure that also, has its constraints on schedule. So how did you maneuver a work-life balance, having these, these roles,
Yeah, I think the whole work-life balance topic is interesting, especially if, I was in a very different position in life than my peers. Back to being a female and being young, and I'm in a different phase of life. I think I spent a lot of time thinking about this whole work-life balance construct because everything I've heard from, like, corporate organizations or the industry just hasn't really satisfied me. I didn't understand, like, this whole work-life balance when I started. And maybe to my own fault, right? But all I heard was, like, do some yoga and touch your toes on your lunch break. Like, have a salad. And I just didn't. Trust me, I'm a full proponent in that. I'm very, very interested in, like, mind and body connection and all of that stuff. But it wasn't really translating to work-life balance. And I think that what I landed on in contemplating this enough was that there is no good definition for it because it should be different. One, for every person, but two, for every phase of your life. Like, as you're iterating through your life, your balance and where those things sit on the scale should change with you. So take me in my internship or finishing school and starting full time. I am fortunate enough to have found something that I loved for work, and I made it my life. Like, and I think that that's okay. So we're living in this kind of dichotomy of either we're talking about work-life balance and you don't have to, work yourself to the bone to have a successful career, and that's true. But then we also have this culture of being busy as a statement of pride. And the busier I am, kind of the bigger my ego was. And this is true for me. Like, busy was a badge of honor. And so now I'm like, I'm glad I was really busy. I'm really glad that I married my work in the beginning because I don't think I would have gotten those leadership roles so young, those opportunities. I don't think I would have seen the success that I had and continued to invest in my learning and development and still today if I didn't obsess over it like I do. At the same time, I think where we fail in this work-life balance conversation is that, like, our lives change and those scales need to change with it. So we keep trying to do a thing that worked for us when we were in the first phase of our life, but our life has changed and our behaviors don't with it.
Right.
Or if they don't with it, then that's where we fall out of balance. So life happens. Getting older, you get married, you have kids, you have loss, you go through whatever you go through in life. And so I think that work-life balance might change every day for you.
True.
Every week, whatever it is. So for me, work-life balance today looks different than it did when I was 21. And I know it will look different 10 years from now. So that's kind of where I've landed is work-life balance is this, like, spectrum. And I evolve and I iterate like I do in my work. And so that will too. And so sometimes I'm going to be knee-deep in it. Sometimes I need a salad.
Yeah, that's a good one. And with all that being said, what is something in cybersecurity that fulfills you the most?
Yeah, well, as it could be clear, I get really passionate about this. I really do love this field. And I think it's because I can see impact on the other side of it. sometimes when I'm unfulfilled, it's because I think I don't see where the work I'm putting into information security and data protection, all these things, and maybe I'm not seeing, like, my lens is too zoomed in to notice that this is actually helping someone on the other side. So I'm most fulfilled when I'm able to see, I've been in program development and delivery, post-breach or proactive transformation throughout my career. So where I get really excited is when what we've just spent the last several months implementing, let's say a new endpoint protection tool, right, or data loss prevention solution, whatever it might be, when that starts working and the team gets to see, oh my God, we wouldn't have caught that before. And we did catch it now. Like there's this little spark that people, like, that happens in people's minds when, like, the metric shows you that this helped. And that, for me, is like makes me want to do it all over again. The minute like the solution starts working and everything's like business as usual and smooth sailing, I'm moving on to the next broken thing.
Right.
Because I love the moment when it clicks and people have the aha moment. Or now in consulting, it's demystifying that risk for people to say, like, I know your to-do list is so overwhelmingly long.
Yeah.
Your gaps are enormous, and that's a lot, and that's hard, and it's expensive, and your people are burned out, and I get it because I've been there. The way we can kind of get pragmatic about risk and get actionable on their strategy, for me, it's all the people part of it. Because the technology kind of stays the same with each project, but like the people there are just really cool to be able to witness, like, okay, we can do this. Like, we don't have to do it all today. We can see where it's going to burn the most, and we can focus on that. And that really excites me. I think I find that really fulfilling.
Yeah, that's great. And what would be something, if you can give advice to someone who perhaps is working in cybersecurity, and maybe not necessarily in a manager role, but what was something you could advise them to advance themselves in their career?
Yeah. First of all, I have mentees who absolutely, like, keep me going. They don't, I don't know if they realize, like, when I'm working with them, that they're doing so much for me. I love mentoring, and I would definitely recommend anyone who, like, I don't think you're ever too soon to kind of give back, because I think in a career like this, like, you keep the magic that you have by giving it away.
Gotcha.
And when I'm working with someone who is early in their career, and let's face it, like, I could look pretty early in my career too, however you are in the spin it.
Right.
But I think for me, it's what reminds me of, like, just how hard I work and why I do what I do, and I do it for them a lot of the times. And so something that I like to tell my mentees, and just kind of how do you advance in this career, we talk about the balance between humility and courage. When you're in your early career, right, you're out of college, or you're pivoting out of one career to another, which I also have in my network of mentees, and those are really fun. It's humility and courage in combination. So the humility is to say yes to anything, right? You may not get that dream security role the first time, right? You're probably not going to be running a pen test on a red team, like, right out of college. Maybe you are. That would be fantastic. But maybe you're starting off in something more rudimentary. Do it. Say yes. I mean, just anecdotally, in my first role, and I was a project manager for the cyber teams, just kind of learning what they were doing. And then I moved into the GRC role we were talking about. And I was asked to test the satellite phones before hurricane season. We're in Florida. For our business continuity plan. Okay. So picture me. So you have to take a satellite phone, which is like the size of, your grandmother's first phone.
Yeah.
And I go, and you have to get far enough away from cell service. So every lunch hour, 12 o'clock in a summer's day in Florida, I'm on the roof of our garage testing satellite phones every day for 2 weeks to make sure that in the event of a hurricane, the executives can use these phones to get in touch with each other. and I am just sweating bullets. Like, I'm disgusting.
Right.
And I'm on the phone looking like, I realized to it later on that the executive floor of our office building was floor 6, and it overlooked the garage. So I think that the ELT probably thought that I was some kind of crazy lady, like searching for a UFO, because I'm on the roof of the garage in their line of sight,
Right.
walking around with a satellite phone trying to test the connection. And it was not fun,
Sure.
you know, and I'm taking my lunch hour to do it because I don't know why. But you know what I was doing at the same time was I was learning about business continuity and disaster recovery and things that are so necessary in our industry that I still use today, right? Every ransomware conversation I have comes back to BCDR. And I think about the days that I was on the roof testing a phone, right? So that's the humility. I said yes because I was willing to do anything that got me closer to this industry. And that did. So there's the humility on that aspect. Then we have the courage, because if you're anything like me, it's really hard to do something if you're not already the best at it.
Right.
And then it's like this vicious cycle. So you're not doing something because you're not the best at it, but you can't become the best at it if you don't start doing it. And so I think the courage part was just kind of breaking that cycle, not being afraid to suck. And just starting, right? And especially for someone early career looking to advance, just start, suck, ask questions, fail, try again, research. Like the number of times I said, yes, I knew how to do something, but then spent the next 5 hours on YouTube, you know, just because I wanted to know how to do it and I wanted to be given the opportunity to do something, that I was willing to just go figure it out and ask my colleagues who were always happy to help. So I think at the end of the day, for kind of early career, looking to advance, sometimes our biggest hindrance is just ourselves. And I know we face obstacles outside of us too, but a lot of it, for me at least, and the people I've connected with in their journeys, is like, get out of your own way, get humble, work hard, fail. And, you know, little by little, you look back and realize how far you've come.
Wow. Yeah. That's true. And you mentioned there that you start off as a project manager role, right?
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, would you say that's an entry-level position?
It can be. I mean, it starts from anywhere, you know. The entry-level project manager role I had was called the Scrum Master, which is agile methodology, and there are plenty of entry-level roles there, but it goes all the way up to kind of principal-level roles in program management. But sure, it is a really good way, in my opinion, to get started.
So piggyback on that, if someone was going for a role like that, what would you suggest the tools and the education they should have to approach a position and apply for something like that?
Yeah, so fortunately, there are so many ways to get certified, and that is what hiring managers are typically looking for is in program management. There's a methodology, right? And there are frameworks, and so you need to learn them. So I went to a boot camp, a Scrum Master boot camp, spent a few days kind of learning the lay of the land. What is the Scrum methodology? What is Agile program management? Eventually did the same type of course for Scaled Agile and took it to the next level. So there's an academic element to it. There are a lot of skill sets that you probably don't need to take a course for if you're learning, you know, organizational management and the tools, or, you know, how to manage a budget and things like that. I'm sure there's plenty of free resources online as well. But, you know, it's hard to just kind of step in on day one and know what you're doing. There are a lot of people with a natural skill for organization and keeping people on track with their work that I would say just open up the book and learn some of these frameworks that technology organizations in particular really rely on. Okay. And then you can always, you know, use what you want, use what works for you or for what works for your project, and leave the rest.
Got it. Well, I'd like to get your opinion about some technology, machine learning, AI. What is your opinion, since with your experience, of the future of AI, and how will that play a role in cybersecurity?
Yeah, since I started consulting too, I feel like I get asked this more than I used to, and maybe it's just kind of it's growing in interest and buzzwordiness. And from a security practitioner lens that I bring, I think there's kind of two ways to answer this. One is just AI at large and the risk that it poses to data and to, protection and all of that. But then there are also the efficiencies that AI is providing in the security industry itself, right? Our endpoint protection, our intelligence, like everything is already getting a lot more sophisticated, getting a lot more automated. That's not that new. It's just kind of now we're spinning it in ways where we can see the potential with AI that like every senior manager and above is asking their team, like, well, what if we used AI? Would this go faster, right? And a lot of it can, but I think that we're probably slapping the label on too much right now and making it, really alluring. But I think relative to its potential, we are still in its infancy. Security teams and engineers have been automating for a long time, and now we're spinning it with, more autonomous learning, and the potential it has is giant. But I think we're already behind, honestly, on being responsible stewards in this technology. And at the risk of being a little too reductive probably for this conversation, I think that, of course, I want a future of AI where it's innovative and we're solving new problems. And for you, from the healthcare side of it, there's so much I think it can do to unlock problem solving in ways, or surgery, or whatever it is that affects your space. But I think at the same time, those that are developing these programs, or those that are supposed to be regulating them, have to be held to a much higher standard of care, just to mitigate the risk, to understand, to take the time, just like we were talking about, to take the time to learn program management, to learn cybersecurity. Like, we need to take the time to learn what AI means, the risk that it poses to privacy, to data protection, to your finances, whatever it might be, and hold those accountable to addressing those risks.
Gotcha. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I really looking forward to talk to you about SecurityLex.
Yeah.
Your venture that you have established, your company, consulting. Tell us about that, how that got started.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun, and I'm learning a lot, whether I knew I would or not. So SecurityLex is really just me and my one-woman shop of translating everything that I've learned and packaging up all of this incredible and sometimes insane experience, and being able to now spin it, from this kind of, I've responded to an incident. We spent several years, building a transformation program and implemented significant change across every domain. And I've gotten to touch so much of it. And now I've turned SecurityLex into just a way for myself to kind of come in to organizations, either post-breach, looking to remediate and then take a bigger picture approach to their long-term strategy, or organizations that are just getting started, or rethinking their security posture and the controls that they're implementing, and helping them be proactive in their solutions and how they're defining their approaches as well. So I'm loving the consulting side. I think that in my roles prior, being in industry and being, the CISO's chief of staff, or being the leader of global assurance, like, there was a lot of consulting-like work in order to be a business partner. But now this is just flipping it on its axis and now being able to help other organizations and see what their world looks like has been really eye-opening and definitely kind of rekindled the flame of what got the fire in my belly with incidents to begin with.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you kind of mentioned that. What is one of the differences that you've noticed from being like working at a company and starting your own company?
Yeah. I don't think I realized how different cognitively it was going to be for me between being an in-industry leader, practitioner, to being a consultant helping clients do their work in some really awesome ways. It just was a huge shift from being in industry. It's, the pressure's high, the stakes are high, you're a leader, so you think that if we go with plan A or plan B can change the trajectory of my job, my reputation, or, my next piece of work that I'm going to have to do. And so I think that the way that I cared for my job maybe had a little bit more of like a fang on it. Like I was sharp. We would have to get after the things that we needed to do being in, IT security. And if we wanted something, we were gonna fight for it. Now, shifting as a consultant, there's diplomacy.
Right.
And so I'm all back to where I started in being a politician a little bit, and if I have to say the same thing in 5 different versions, I do them all with a smile, and I'm happy to do it. So it's this like new way of talking to people. Words are everything. So ultimately, even though like the controls are the controls, the technology is the technology, like everything sort of stayed the same in my environment when I went from industry to consulting, the way I care about my work had to change, right? It's from going to like the like what's the word? We would just say it how it is kind of thing. You get after it and you get what you need done. You massage it, you make a gorgeous presentation. And if it doesn't get adopted, you go to bed, and you work on the next thing and you continue to articulate risk and ways to control for it, but you don't have to die on every hill. Right. And I've definitely had to learn that through this evolution of kind of moving into the consulting space.
Wow. So adding to that, what would be so far one of your biggest challenges aside from that, obviously?
I think that kind of gaining my footing as a business owner is a challenge. I don't know. I think that I have to find now, going from just being in the comfort of my work was my work, and I was salaried, and I knew what I was doing the next day for the most part, though there was always variety. Now I'm thinking about, what is my business strategy? Who are my clients? How am I going to market myself? What happens if I mess up? All these different things that I didn't really have to think about when I wasn't my own CEO. Right. To doing that now, it's challenging. Not that I don't want to do it. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's what's keeping me also staying plugged in to making sure that I know what's going on in the industry or where the pain points are for organizations, because I want to be at the cutting edge of it. So, there's never a challenge. I think that, like, if you want it, you can probably go get it. So that's what I'm figuring out now.
Got you. Let's say somebody that's listening or watching this, and they're in a role in cybersecurity, and they're thinking of starting a company. You wearing both hats now, right? what would you say? Because some people will say, "Oh no, it's easy. I'll just start a company." But like you mentioned, when you're an employee, you have a salary, so you don't have to worry about your income, right? And you probably have more of a set schedule. So what is the adverse with that being the one man band or the one woman band, right? With it's all on you.
What would I say to someone
who's thinking about, I'll just start a company. I'm tired of my boss. I'm tired of working, having a 30-minute lunch break. I just want to be my own boss. It'd be a lot easier for me. My life would be easier.
Yeah, sounds it, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, first of all, I'm definitely encouraging of people to look for those opportunities to kind of set themselves apart and own the narrative of what their career looks like. At the same time, do some research,
Right.
Talk to peers, talk to people like me, talk to those that you trust in your network. It's kind of the same reset that I am feeling when we were talking about early career of humility and courage. It's the same kind of thing. Like, I will now have a bigger interest in doing something that maybe I wouldn't have been open to doing in my director role. I think I now have to open myself up to doing the things that are going to set me up for success as a business owner that I didn't think I would want to do before. So there's the humility. Now it's the courage to reach out to people on LinkedIn who I've never met before. That's way out of my comfort zone. And I'm doing that. And I'm meeting people like you and getting very far out of the context of what I found to be my thing. And it's taking courage to do that too. So maybe these things are kind of just recurring throughout your journey, but shape themselves a little differently depending on what you're after. But look into it, why not? And don't be afraid to pivot. I think one thing I'm looking at now would be a really big pivot, but I found something incredibly interesting that while I go in with a plan, I think sometimes there are others and bigger plans that maybe I can't ever anticipate. And so keeping an open mind to when you embark on a journey like this, like being your own boss, be really receptive to what is thrown at you. And it just kind of sets you up into that humility and courage phase all over again.
Sure. What would you say that was your biggest push? Because you were established, right, in your prior position are you still working that position, or you're 100% business owner?
I'm all me.
Right. So that was a big step to take, a big jump. Was there anything in particular that pushed you and said, "Okay, it's time, I'm ready"?
Yeah, there was. There were two things. I think one was just kind of knowing when it was my time to move on from my role. And that's hard to do, especially being in an organization since an internship, right? I felt like I didn't really know any other world. And I could stay there and continue to, work with awesome people and have a great career, but stay in the same place for a long time where I would risk getting a bit stagnant eventually and would eventually make it harder to move on. So I kind of just felt the pull to say, I know when to fold them. And I felt like it was time, as hard of a decision as that was. And then, when you find yourself kind of aligning with that call, I got a call, like a physical call from someone who said, we're working with this really large company. They just went through a ransomware attack. They're looking to implement, a long-term transformation strategy. And this person who called me had known me from the past and said, I think that they need exactly what you've done there. And would you be willing to help us help them as a consultant and contract? And I'm like, you could not have called it a better time. This was what I had been contemplating doing, trying to find, the right plan of attack, like trying to figure out, can I really do this? Is anyone going to want me to do this? And
Sure.
And then I get asked to do the very thing that I had been kind of dreaming up. So that was just kind of the obvious, like, okay, go.
Right.
So, you know, it was one, identifying like it was my time, just connecting with the what got you here won't get you there kind of mantra. Moving on is important. Growth is important. It's hard, but do it kind of thing. And then the second was not immediately, but soon enough getting validation that I was on the right track here, and getting that opportunity. So it was kind of a no-brainer at that point that I got to take a gamble on myself.
Right.
And every day I think I've been taking a gamble on myself since.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, I do appreciate you sharing your journey. If somebody's out there that needs your services, how will they get a hold of you and contact you?
Oh, please reach out on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way to find me. And I do have a website. You're right.
Okay.
securitylex.com.
securitylex.com. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank you
today.
so much.
I really
This is
appreciate
so
it.
much fun. I appreciate the opportunity.
That's it. So I'm Stephen Perano. This is the Cyber Health Podcast. Please like, share this video, and we'll see you in the next episode.